The vast warships of the Galactic Hegemony emerged from hyperspace above Earth, their hulls gleaming in the sunlight. 300 conquered species had contributed to these massive ships. Admiral Ta-1 stood tall on the command deck of his flagship, Eternal Dominion. His eyes narrowed as he looked at the blue planet below. "Primitive," he said to Commander Haynul, who stood beside him. "Their sensors have only just noticed us." Haynul nodded. "Yes, sir. They have simple spaceships, but nothing that could fight even our smallest vessels." The Admiral allowed himself a small smile. "Send them our usual message. Tell them they are now part of the hegemony." Lieutenant Ji-ho bowed slightly and sent the message. It was carefully written to sound friendly while making it clear that resistance would be foolish. This message had made many planets surrender without a fight. The bridge crew waited for the usual response: fear, panic, or quick surrender. Instead, the main screen lit up with the face of a human. Colonel Kim smiled at them, looking relaxed and friendly. "Welcome to Earth. We'd love to talk about diplomatic relations. Would you like to send a team down? We make really good coffee." Admiral Ta-1's smile disappeared. He turned to Haynul with a frown. "They don't understand what's happening." "It seems not, sir," Haynul replied. "Should we show them our weapons?" The Admiral thought for a moment. "No. Their confusion might help us. Get the diplomatic team ready." The diplomatic team prepared quickly. They wore their formal uniforms with medals and symbols of rank clearly displayed. These clothes had been designed to impress and intimidate. Admiral Ta-1 selected 5 officers to join him: Commander Haynul, Lieutenant Ji-ho, Security Chief Du-yun, and Cultural Specialist Yoon-ji. "Remember," the Admiral told his team, "these humans are simple and backward. They don't know the power of the hegemony yet. We will accept their surrender politely." The shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere. Du-yun scanned the landing area and reported, "No weapons detected. Their security forces are lightly armed." As expected, Ta-1 said, "They know resistance is pointless." The shuttle landed in a large open area. A small group of humans waited nearby. They wore blue uniforms that looked plain compared to the hegemony's elaborate dress. The human leader, Colonel Kim, stepped forward with a smile. "Welcome to Earth," she said, extending her hand. Yoon-ji whispered to the Admiral, "This is a greeting gesture. You should clasp her hand briefly." Ta-1 did so, noticing the human's grip was firm but friendly. "I am Admiral Ta-1 of the Galactic Hegemony. We have come to formalize your world's incorporation into our empire." Colonel Kim's smile never faltered. "Why don't we discuss this inside? It's a beautiful day, but the sun can be quite strong." The Admiral was surprised by this casual response, but followed the humans to a nearby building. Inside was a simple meeting room with a large table and comfortable chairs. The humans offered drinks called coffee and tea, which Yoon-ji scanned and declared safe. Admiral Ta-1 sat down, his posture perfect, his face serious. "Colonel Kim, perhaps you misunderstand. The hegemony is not offering an alliance. Earth is being incorporated into our empire. Resistance would be—" He paused for effect. "Unwise." Colonel Kim sipped her coffee. "I understand perfectly, Admiral, and we're happy to discuss terms. Earth has always been interested in peaceful relations with other species." The Admiral exchanged glances with Haynul. This was not the usual response. "There are no terms to discuss. The hegemony commands, and member worlds obey." "That sounds rather one-sided," a human officer said. The name tag read Major Min. Security Chief Du-yun's hand moved to his weapon. "You dare question the hegemony?" Colonel Kim raised her hand calmly. "We're just talking. No need for weapons. Tell me, Admiral, what benefits does Earth receive from this arrangement?" Ta-1 was momentarily speechless. In 300 conquests, no species had ever asked this question so directly. "You receive the protection of the mightiest military force in the galaxy," he finally replied. and access to hegemony trade networks. In exchange for, Colonel Kim asked, resources, labor, and military service when required. Hey Newell answered. Colonel Kim nodded thoughtfully. I see. And if we decline this offer? The room grew tense. Du Yun's hand again moved toward his weapon. Admiral Ta Wan leaned forward. No world has ever declined. The hegemony possesses weapons that can reduce your cities to ash from orbit. Your planet has no defense against us. To his surprise, the humans exchanged glances, and several actually smiled. Admiral, Colonel Kim said gently, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We're not refusing to talk. We're simply suggesting that a mutually beneficial relationship might work better than an imperial one. The hegemony does not negotiate with lesser species, Ta Wan stated firmly. Colonel Kim nodded to an aide, who handed her a small device. Perhaps before we continue this discussion, you might want to look at these scans of your fleet. The device projected a hologram showing perfect renderings of the hegemony ships, including internal systems that should have been shielded from scanning. How did you? Newell began. Let's just say, Colonel Kim replied with that same calm smile, that coffee isn't the only thing humans do well. Admiral Ta Wan felt, for the first time in his career, a flicker of uncertainty. 2 days had passed since the tense first meeting. Admiral Ta Wan had spent most of that time reviewing the strange scans the humans had shown him. How had they managed to see through the hegemony's most advanced shielding? The question kept him awake at night. Now he stood in what the humans called a modest defense outpost, though it was larger than many planetary capitals in the hegemony. Commander Newell stood on his right, looking unimpressed as usual. Chief Engineer Sun Mei stood on his left, her eyes darting everywhere, taking in every detail. Colonel Kim walked ahead of them, her blue uniform crisp and simple. We appreciate your interest in our facilities, Admiral. Most visitors find our technology rather plain. Plain is an understatement, Commander Newell muttered. They entered a massive docking bay where several human ships were parked. Nothing about them looked special. They were smooth and functional, but lacked the intimidating weapon arrays and powerful engines that marked hegemony vessels. This is our standard patrol vessel, the UES Curiosity, Colonel Kim said, pointing to a medium-sized ship nearby. It was silver with blue markings and looked like it could hold maybe 30 people. Sun Mei walked around it slowly, her scanner device moving up and down. She couldn't hide her disappointment. Your propulsion system seems basic. The hegemony ships used advanced fusion drives that could achieve near-light speeds. This human ship appeared to have simple chemical rockets, technology the hegemony had abandoned centuries ago. Colonel Kim smiled. Oh, we don't use conventional propulsion anymore. That's just for emergency backup. Sun Mei looked up from her scanner with surprise. What do you use then? She walked around the ship again, finding no visible engine components that made sense. Quantum displacement. It's cleaner, more efficient. Would you like to see? Before any of the hegemony officers could respond, something impossible happened. The ship, the entire ship, simply vanished. Admiral Ta Wan blinked, wondering if his eyes had failed him. Then he spotted the same vessel at the far end of the bay, nearly half a kilometer away. The Admiral's perfect composure finally broke. His mouth opened slightly, and he took a step back. That's impossible. Instantaneous matter transfer violets. Oh, it's not instantaneous, Colonel Kim interrupted with a casual wave of her hand. It takes about 0.03 seconds. We're still working on improving that. Sun Mi's hands were shaking so badly that her scanner nearly fell to the floor. She stared at the device's screen. There's no power signature. How are you generating the energy for this? The hegemony's best scientists had theorized about such technology, but all had concluded it would require more energy than a star could produce. Background vacuum fluctuations, Kim replied as if discussing the weather. Shall we continue the tour? Admiral Ta Wan couldn't move. His mind raced to understand what he had just witnessed. The hegemony had conquered hundreds of worlds because of their technological superiority. Yet here was a technology they had deemed impossible, being used by humans as if it were nothing special. "This can't be real," Commander Haynewell said. "It must be some kind of illusion." Colonel Kim smiled patiently. "Would you like to go inside and take a ride?" Before the Admiral could object, Haynewell stepped forward. "Yes, I would." They walked across the bay to where the ship now sat. A door slid open silently, revealing the simple but comfortable interior. The control room had few instruments compared to hegemony ships. A young human officer sat in what appeared to be the pilot's seat, reading something on a small screen. "Lieutenant Minho, our guests would like a demonstration," Colonel Kim said. The young man looked up and nodded. "Where to?" "Perhaps a quick trip to the moon and back," Colonel Kim suggested. "The moon?" Admiral Taiwan finally found his voice. "That would take hours, even with our fastest ships." Lieutenant Minho pressed a few controls. "Everyone please sit down." They had barely settled into their seats when the view outside the windows changed. The Earth's docking bay was gone. Now they were looking at the gray surface of the moon. "We're here," Lieutenant Minho said. "Would you like to orbit once before returning?" Sun Mi's face had gone pale. She checked her scanner again and again. "This is impossible. We traveled 384,000 kilometers in less than a second. 0.08 seconds. Actually, Lieutenant Minho corrected. It's a bit slower for longer distances." Admiral Taiwan felt sick. This technology made the hegemony's mighty warships obsolete. A human vessel could appear next to any hegemony ship and fire weapons before they could react, or simply disappear if threatened. "How long have you had this technology?" he asked quietly. "About 50 years, Colonel Kim replied. "The early versions were much slower and less reliable. They completed a quick orbit of the moon, and then in another blink, they were back in the docking bay." As they exited the ship, Sun Mi approached Colonel Kim. "You mentioned vacuum fluctuations. Do you mean you're extracting energy from quantum foam, the zero-point energy field?" Colonel Kim nodded. "That's a simplified explanation, but yes. But the energy requirements would be enormous by conventional standards," Kim finished for her. "That was the breakthrough. We don't need to generate the energy. We just need to direct it." Admiral Taiwan had never felt so small in his life. The hegemony had built its empire on being more advanced than everyone else. Now he understood the humans' lack of fear. They weren't ignorant of the hegemony's power. They were simply so far beyond it that it posed no threat to them. "Shall we continue?" Colonel Kim asked brightly. "The weapons systems are on the next level." The Admiral could only nod silently as he followed, wondering what other impossibilities awaited them. After a night of little sleep, Admiral Taiwan called an emergency meeting with his senior officers aboard the flagship. The demonstrations of human technology had shaken him deeply, but he refused to accept that the mighty hegemony could be so thoroughly outclassed. "There must be a weakness," he insisted, pacing the conference room. "No technology is perfect." Commander Haynewell looked troubled. "The quantum displacement drive alone makes their ships nearly impossible to target, and we still don't understand how it works." Chief Engineer Sun Mi had spent the entire night analyzing her scanner data. "Their technology defies our understanding of physics, but perhaps in actual combat conditions." Admiral Taiwan stopped pacing. "Exactly. A controlled demonstration is one thing. Real combat is another." He tapped his communication badge. "Contact Colonel Kim. Tell her I propose a military exercise." Later that day, the Admiral sat in the observation room with Colonel Kim and several other human officers. Through the large window, they could see the empty space where the exercise would take place. A military exercise would be beneficial, Admiral Taiwan suggested, trying to sound casual though he was desperate to reassert hegemony superiority. "A friendly demonstration between our forces." Colonel Kim glanced at an older man beside her. The insignia on his uniform identified him as General Da-hyun. The general simply shrugged. "Sounds fun. One ship each." The admiral nodded. "One ship. Basic evasion and targeting only. No actual weapons fire, of course." "Of course." Colonel Kim agreed with a smile that made the admiral uncomfortable. The hegemony's finest battleship, the inevitable Victory, moved into position at the agreed coordinates. Admiral Ta-won had personally selected Captain Hai-jin to command it. She was their most decorated officer, with 30 years of combat experience and over a dozen planetary conquests to her name. The humans sent a small vessel, about 1/10 the size of the hegemony battleship. It looked like a scout ship rather than a proper combat vessel. The admiral allowed himself a small smile. Perhaps the humans' amazing transportation technology didn't work well on larger ships. The human pilot's face appeared on the communication screen. Lieutenant Jun looked very young, almost like a cadet. He gone during the pre-exercise communications. "Sorry," the lieutenant said, covering his mouth. "Late night. Ready when you are." Admiral Ta-won frowned at this lack of respect but said nothing. He glanced at Colonel Kim, who was watching with mild interest, as if this were an everyday training session. "Begin," Admiral Ta-won commanded. The hegemony battleship moved first, its engines flaring as it executed a perfect attack pattern. Captain Hai-jin was famous for her aggressive tactics, and she immediately positioned her ship for a targeting lock. But the human vessel was no longer where it had been. It appeared suddenly behind the hegemony ship. By the time Captain Hai-jin ordered a turn, the human ship had vanished again. "What's happening?" Admiral Ta-won demanded, leaning forward in his seat. On the command channel, Captain Hai-jin's voice was tight with frustration. "They're moving too fast. The targeting computer can't keep up." What followed next made no tactical sense to anyone watching. The human ship seemed to bend space around itself, appearing simultaneously in multiple locations. At least, that's what the hegemony sensors showed. "That's impossible," Commander Hae-nul whispered. "No ship can be in 5 places at once." Captain Hai-jin's voice came through again, now with clear alarm. "Sir, our targeting systems have failed completely. They're everywhere and nowhere." On one of the smaller screens, the admiral could see Captain Hai-jin's face. She was one of the steadiest officers in the fleet, yet now she looked confused and frightened. "Adjust your sensors," Admiral Ta-won ordered. "It must be some kind of electronic warfare." "We've tried, sir," Captain Hai-jin replied. "All frequencies, all systems. We can't." Her image suddenly vanished, replaced by static. All the screens monitoring the inevitable Victory went dark. "What happened?" the admiral demanded, rising to his feet. "What did you do?" Colonel Kim looked genuinely surprised. "Nothing yet. The exercise just started." A moment later, Lieutenant Jun's face appeared on the emergency communication channel. The young man was checking something on his wrist and looked bored. "Hey, is this exercise over? I'm supposed to be off duty in 20 minutes. Admiral Ta-won stared at the screen in disbelief. "What did you do to our ship?" "Oh, just a standard system disable," Lieutenant Jun replied. "Don't worry, your life support is still working. I only shut down propulsion, weapons, shields, and communications." "But how?" Chief Engineer Sunma asked, her professional curiosity overcoming her shock. "We detected no energy weapon discharge." Lieutenant Jun shrugged. "No need for weapons. I just adjusted the quantum field around your ship to temporarily prevent certain electrical systems from functioning. They'll reset in about 10 minutes. You can selectively disable systems on another ship without damaging them." Sunma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sure. Standard procedure. Less paperwork than destroying things." General Da-hyun, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. "Thank you, Lieutenant. That will be all. So I can go. My friend's band is playing tonight." "Yes, you can go," the general said with a small smile. As Lieutenant Jun's image disappeared, Admiral Ta-1 sank back into his chair. The inevitable victory was their newest and most powerful warship. It carried enough firepower to reduce a planet's surface to molten slag, and a human officer, barely out of training, had disabled it without firing a shot, while worrying about making it to a concert on time. For the first time in his long career, Admiral Ta-1 felt something close to fear. The hegemony had conquered 300 species by being the strongest. Now he realized they had simply never encountered anyone truly strong. Perhaps, Colonel Kim said gently, it's time we had a more honest conversation about Earth's place in the galaxy. Back on Earth, the hegemony officers sat in a spacious conference room. Large windows showed the blue sky and the distant shapes of mountains. Admiral Ta-1 had not spoken since they returned from the military exercise. His mind was still processing what he had seen. Captain Hyjin had been brought down to Earth as well. She sat with perfect posture, but her eyes revealed her shock. The inevitable victory was still undergoing system restarts. Commander Hae-Newell kept glancing at the human officers, as if expecting them to suddenly reveal their true aggressive nature. Chief Engineer Sunmai was busy writing notes on her device, occasionally muttering to herself. General Da-hyun entered the room with Colonel Kim. They carried a tray with tea and small cakes. The casual hospitality seemed out of place after such a demonstration of power. I hope you like green tea, General Da-hyun said as he placed cups in front of each hegemony officer. It's one of our oldest traditions. Admiral Ta-1 finally found his voice. His hands were trembling slightly as he picked up his cup. Why did you hide these capabilities? Why pretend to be less advanced? General Da-hyun sat down and sipped his tea calmly. We weren't hiding anything. We simply didn't want to overwhelm you. Overwhelm us. Hae-Newell nearly shouted, standing up. You could have conquered the hegemony. Several guards outside the room looked in with concern, but Colonel Kim waved them away. Why would we want to do that? Colonel Kim asked, looking genuinely confused. Conquest is inefficient. Admiral Ta-1 stared at her. The concept seemed alien to him. The strong conquered the weak. That was the way of the universe. That was the foundation of the hegemony. I don't understand, he admitted. Think about it, General Da-hyun said. Conquering requires huge resources. Controlling unwilling populations is costly. Destroying resistance wastes potential allies. It's all inefficient. Sunma, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. How did you advance so quickly? General Da-hyun's expression turned serious. Our history isn't peaceful. Centuries of conflict pushed our innovation. When we finally united and looked to the stars, we decided to do better. He touched a control on the table, and a holographic display appeared above them. It showed scenes from Earth's history, ancient battles with swords and spears, then wars with primitive guns, then massive world wars with planes and tanks, and finally terrible weapons that created mushroom clouds. We nearly destroyed ourselves many times, Colonel Kim said softly. Each war pushed our technology forward, but at a terrible cost. The images changed to show peaceful scenes, scientists working together, great structures being built, and finally the first human steps into space. When we finally united as one planet, General Da-hyun continued, we promised ourselves we would not bring our worst habits to the stars. We would explore, learn, and when possible, make friends. Make friends, Captain Hyjin repeated, as if the words were foreign to her. Yes, Colonel Kim smiled. Much more pleasant than making enemies, don't you think? The Admiral was still processing this strange philosophy when another thought occurred to him. But how did you know about the hegemony? Our first ships only detected your planet 3 months ago. Colonel Kim and General Da-hyun exchanged looks. We've been observing the hegemony for decades, Colonel Kim admitted. Your expansion patterns, your governance. We were waiting for the right moment to introduce ourselves. The room fell silent. Admiral Taiwan felt a cold sensation spreading through his chest. "You knew about us all along," he whispered. "Of course," General Dahyun nodded. "But we prefer friendship to subjugation. Always have." The Admiral's mind raced. If the humans had been watching for decades, they had seen the hegemony conquer world after world. They had watched as resistant species were punished. They had observed the entire empire being built through force and fear. And they had done nothing. "Why didn't you stop us?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "If you have such power, why let us conquer others?" General Dahyun sighed. "That is a difficult question, one we debated for many years. We tried to intervene a few times, quietly," Colonel Kim explained. "But we found that direct interference often caused more problems than it solved. Cultures need to find their own paths." Sun Mei looked up from her notes. "But you let us come to Earth. You knew we intended to conquer you." "Yes," General Dahyun smiled. "We thought it was time for a proper introduction, and we hoped that once you understood our capabilities, you might be open to a different kind of relationship." "What kind of relationship?" Admiral Taiwan asked cautiously. "Partnership," Colonel Kim said simply. "Exchange of ideas, cultures, art, science. Trade based on mutual benefit, not exploitation. Cooperation on challenges that face all intelligent life." Captain Hai-Jin shook her head. "The Supreme Council will never accept this. The hegemony does not partner with other species. We rule them." "Perhaps," General Dahyun said, "it's time for the hegemony to evolve." The human general stood and walked to the window. "Look outside. Admiral, our world was once divided into nations that fought constant wars. Each believed they had to conquer or be conquered. Now we live as one people with many cultures. We found strength in diversity and cooperation." The Admiral joined him at the window. He saw humans of different colors and styles walking peacefully below. They looked happy. "You're suggesting the hegemony could become a true alliance?" he asked quietly. "I'm suggesting it might be more powerful that way," General Dahyun replied. "And certainly more stable." Admiral Taiwan had served the hegemony for 50 years. He had never questioned its methods or goals. But now, standing beside this calm human general, looking out at a peaceful world more advanced than his own, he began to wonder if there might be a better way. "I will need to report to the Supreme Council," he said finally. "Of course," Colonel Kim nodded. "Take all the time you need. We've waited decades. We can wait a little longer." 6 months had passed since Admiral Taiwan's visit to Earth. Those months had been the most difficult of his life. The Hegemony Supreme Council had not believed his reports about human technology. They accused him of exaggeration, fear, even treason. Only when they sent their own spies to Earth did they begin to understand the truth. Now, Admiral Taiwan stood before the full Hegemony Council in their grand chamber. 50 alien species were represented here, all conquered over the centuries. The Admiral looked different today. His uniform was still perfect, but his face no longer showed its usual confidence. He had seen too much, learned too much. "The humans propose an alliance of equals," he announced, his voice echoing in the large room. "They offer technological exchange, cultural integration, and defense cooperation." Supreme Counselor Jinho, a tall being with blue-gray skin, stood up angrily. "We do not negotiate with lesser species." Many council members nodded in agreement. The hegemony had never negotiated in its 1,000-year history. "They are not lesser," Taiwan stated firmly. "Their technology surpasses ours by centuries. Yet they choose cooperation over dominance." The chamber grew quiet. This was not the Admiral Taiwan they knew, the cold conqueror who had added 30 worlds to the hegemony. Commander Haynewell stepped forward with data projections. The images floated in the center of the room, showing charts and maps. Since opening relations with humans, 15 hegemony worlds have requested independence, Haynewell reported. The council chamber erupted in outrage. Leaders shouted and threatened punishment for these rebellious worlds. Admiral Ta-One raised his hand, and slowly the noise died down. The humans have influenced these worlds not through force, but through example. They've shown there's another way to exist in this galaxy. What way is that? Asked Counselor Rio, one of the few who seemed curious rather than angry. Partnership, Ta-One replied. Equal exchange. Freedom with responsibility. The humans call it democracy. Democracy is inefficient, Supreme Counselor Jin-Ho growled. It leads to chaos. I thought so too, the Admiral admitted. But their world is not chaotic. It is peaceful and more advanced than ours. And most importantly, they are not alone. He nodded to He Newell, who changed the projection. Now it showed star maps with hundreds of points of light. The humans have allies, Ta-One continued. Many advanced species who hide their technology as Earth does. They call themselves the Galactic Association. They have been watching us for centuries, waiting to see if we would evolve beyond conquest. This revelation shocked the Council into silence. The hegemony had believed itself to be the greatest power in the galaxy. Now they learned they were simply the loudest and most aggressive. We have two choices, Admiral Ta-One said quietly. We can refuse their offer and become isolated. Our conquered worlds will continue to seek freedom, and we will slowly collapse. Or we can accept their hand of friendship and join a much larger community of worlds. The debate lasted for weeks. Some counselors wanted to fight to the end. Others saw the wisdom in Ta-One's words. Eventually, reason prevailed. 1 year later, the former hegemony headquarters hosted the first Galactic Cooperative Summit. The Great Hall that once held only the Supreme Council now welcomed representatives from 500 worlds. Some had been part of the hegemony. Others came from the previously hidden Galactic Association. All now stood as equals. Admiral Ta-One, now serving as diplomatic liaison, watched humans and various alien species working together on scientific problems once thought unsolvable. His old uniform was gone, replaced by the simple blue clothing of the cooperative. Colonel Kim approached him with 2 cups of coffee. She had been promoted too, now serving as Earth's ambassador. Still adjusting to the new reality, she asked, offering him a cup. Ta-One accepted the coffee with a small smile. I spent my career believing in the superiority of the hegemony, only to discover we were children playing at Empire. Kim smiled. That's the beauty of the universe. There's always something new to learn. Across the room, Sunlight was working with a human engineer named June. The former hegemony chief engineer had quickly adapted to the new order, her natural curiosity overcoming her old loyalties. They both burst into laughter over a technical diagram they were studying. What's so amusing? Ta-One asked as they approached. We were just comparing notes on our first meeting, Jun explained. When you all thought our quantum drive was impressive. Was it not? Ta-One asked, confused. The quantum displacement technology had seemed like magic to him. Sunmid grinned. That was our obsolete model. Wait until you see what we're building together now. She showed him the diagram they had been studying. Even with his limited technical knowledge, Ta-One could see it was far beyond anything the hegemony had ever dreamed of. A ship that could travel between galaxies in days, not centuries. Together, Sun Mai emphasized. Human theory combined with Zelvan materials and Quarian mathematics. No single species could have created this alone. Ta-One looked around the room. Where once he had seen only competition and hierarchy, now he saw cooperation and progress. Species that had been bitter enemies under hegemony rule now worked side by side. Former conquerors and conquered now shared knowledge as equals. I never imagined the galaxy could be like this, he admitted. Few do, Colonel Kim said. Power blinds us to possibilities. It took courage for you to see beyond the old ways. As the former admiral looked around the room filled with collaboration instead of conquest, he couldn't help but join in their laughter. Not because anything was funny, but because for the first time in his long life, he felt truly free. The end.